was thinking back just a few years ago in 2019. Many of you would recall the great fire that broke out at the cathedral called Notre Dame in Paris. At that time, it was devastating for the people of that nation and all around the world who were connected to that beautiful, memorable, incredible structure that in just a matter of moments and hours was devastated by fire, and people were going, what do we do? And then President Macron, he quickly came toward the people and said, we are going to do a massive restoration. It's too important to leave as it is. It's important that we deal with this situation and bring life back to not only the city and not only to this nation, but to the world, who find hope in this structure and beauty, and in some way see Christ himself. So in terms of structure, here we are 7 years later, and they have already reopened. There are many things that are still being touched up on the exterior, but they would say that that interior is now renovated in such a way that in some ways it's even more beautiful and brighter than it was before. So I'm saying it's just restored. I think about that in terms of structure, but I also think back to 4 years ago. Many of you would recall in entertainment news that Will Smith at the Oscars slapped the host, Chris Rock, in response to something that Chris had said about his wife. And in response to that, ironically, that same night he won Best Actor for a film that he was in. But the next day he had to resign from the Academy, and for the next 10 years he was banned from any Oscar events. 4 months after that event, that night at the Oscars, he gave a public apology to Chris, his family, anyone who was watching, and you can decide for yourself whether you thought that that was heartfelt or not. For me, my heart always tends toward people who want to restore. People that want to go to that place of saying, I made a mistake, and I want to make it right. And I think that that's, in the process that Will Smith is going through, I don't think he's hurting for money. But no doubt he lost some money in that transaction, in a very quick split-moment decision where he was going to so-called defend his wife, although he fully admitted in this public explanation that he made that decision solely on his own to do what he did. And I think that we can look to those moments of destruction. We can look at a great building of history. I don't think anyone's faulting the building for being on fire. But I think that this person who came in a very public space and made a decision that was difficult for many to watch, maybe all of us in many ways, there needs to be restoration. And I think for us, if we're being really honest with ourselves, there's something within our lives, whether it's current, whether it's past, no doubt there will be something in our future that we'll go, I think I need restored in that area. I think I need a restoration. I think there's something that went on fire in my life. I think there's something that was broken in a moment, just a moment. It seemed like my whole life was going fine, but yet there was just one moment, one split decision, one act, one spark that took something down in my life that I feel I don't know if I can recover from. This morning we're going to look at John 21 and look at the life of Peter for just a few moments. And I want to do that. We've preached through the book of John. We culminated in the resurrection of Jesus in John chapter 20. And if you look at the end of John chapter 20, you would think that the story is over. Let me remind you of the last two verses. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but they are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. You could stop right there. The story could be finished. We could say Jesus was full of life. He He died on the cross for your sins and mine, and then he was resurrected. And there was this restoration that took place. But I am so grateful for chapter 21. Because it's a practical application for me, and hopefully for you, that there is hope when there are moments in our lives when we think that there's no way to be restored. You know, to start the story, though, I want to take it back to the beginning. I think it's an interesting bookend of where we started in John chapter 1. If you recall, in John chapter 1, Jesus calls his disciples. And so he calls his disciples in that chapter, but it's a very brief account in John's book of how they were brought into that discipleship position. So I want to take it from another gospel writer. The book of Luke accounts this very same invitation from Jesus in Luke chapter 5. I want to read the first 11 verses. I don't know if they'll be on the screen. I don't think so. So please just listen along. And the reason I want to have you listen to it is to see the parallel, how this book ends from one end to the other, the story that Jesus is saying to us from the first invitation to the reinstatement. Verse 1, on one day as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, which was another name at that time for the Sea of Galilee. The people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, who was Peter, the person we're going to speak a lot about this morning, and asked him to put it out a little from the shore. And he sat down and he taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon Peter, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." And when they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and they filled both boats so full that they began to sink. And when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees. And he said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." For he and his companions were all astonished at the catch of fish they had taken, and so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were Simon's partners. And then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people." So they pulled the boats up onto the shore. They left everything, and they followed him. It cost a lot to move from the place where they were, doing the things that they were comfortable doing, to move now because of Jesus' impact on their life to a position where they were following him. So as we look at John chapter 21, it's like an epilogue. I don't know if you've watched movies. I have a bit of an epilogue at the end. And the epilogue is that extra piece at the end where time jumps ahead. There's a final reflection. It ties up any loose ends, and it actually gives us a setup for the next chapter. You read books with that little appendage at the end, but an important appendix, and now we have this addition to the gospel story. And so we want to appreciate this epilogue found in John chapter 21, as it seems to connect very well to the beginning of the story of John calling the disciples. Starting in verse 1 of John chapter 21, let's look at this story and see what Jesus has to tell us. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples. Now, what had just happened, he had appeared 3 times now. First, on Easter Sunday. Second, 8 days later, because remember, Thomas wasn't there in the beginning when the disciples saw him. And he was doubting Thomas because he doubted until he saw Jesus face to face, until he saw the scars. He couldn't believe for himself, and yet 8 days later, he did have that privilege. But now we're a little later in the story, and Jesus had declared that he would see and go ahead of them into the space called Galilee. So afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. He is fulfilling his promise. It happened this way, that Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel, the sons of Zebedee, who were James and John being the author of this book, and 2 other disciples were together. So, think in your mind, Peter, very familiar with fishing, now back in his very familiar home location, saying, what am I going to do? I'm waiting for instruction. I'm lingering on my past. And maybe, just maybe, and I don't want to read too much into it, this was a place of comfort for him. He went to a place that he knew. He did the things every day now that he was comfortable doing. And he calls, he's a leader, he's still a leader. And he says, I'm going out to fish, everybody. Do you want to come with me? And they say, yes, we'll go with you. Many of the same people who were there in the beginning in Luke chapter 5's account when Jesus called them into the story. But they go out, and what happens? The very same thing that happens in the first part of the story. They catch nothing. These are seasoned fishermen. You know and I know that early on in the morning is the best time to fish. I'm not a fisherman, but I know that the time you go is not later in the brightest part of the day. You go before the sun rises if you can. And they went out at the prime time and nothing was in their net. So Jesus now, taking through a fourfold station in this chapter, he starts with number 1. I want to tell you that 4 stages go like this. Jesus is going to guide. He is going to provide. He is going to restate. And he is going to reinstate. So now we're in the guiding phase. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore. But the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. Now, you would think that's kind of odd. They had already met Jesus. But as you're going to learn later in the story, he's a football field's length away from them. I don't know about you, but my eyesight as I'm getting older, I don't know if I can recognize any of you from the other side of a football field. And yet there was something about Jesus that was different in this resurrected body. We'll talk just briefly about that in a moment. So he's on the other side of the football field, so to speak. Have you any fish? He says, friends, have you caught any fish? And they had to sheepishly answer, no. He said, throw your net on your right side of the boat, and you will find some. And when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Do you hear the parallel? What was the initial instruction? Follow me. He's bringing them back to that instruction as he's teaching them. He's guiding them at this moment. He's giving them the instruction that they needed. Now, why did they not normally throw on the right side of the boat? That was the side where the rudder was. If you were a boat person, you'll know that that's the starboard side. You have the port side and the starboard side. The right-hand side is the starboard side. And the word starboard comes from steerboard. It's actually the steering side. That's where your steering rudder mechanism was. And so on that side, when you throw your net on the other side, it's a cumbersome place. You can catch up your net on that side. It may not be the most convenient side to go. So all of the times that they had been putting on the port side, it was so there would be the least amount of resistance. It was their place of comfort. It was what they had always known. And now Jesus was starting to turn the tide for them and say, well, maybe, just maybe, if we start doing things a little bit differently and put it on the other side, we might find a catch. And almost instantly, that's what happens. Jesus was instructing them to go against the status quo. So now we move from the guiding part into the providing part as we hear that the disciple who Jesus loved, who we now know is John, the author of this book, the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. He knows it's the Lord. He might say, wait a second, I remember this. I remember this instruction. And wait a second, my eyesight might be better than yours, just in the same way that I'm a better runner than you. Do you remember that John got to the empty tomb faster than Peter? There's something about John. He just understood that this is the Lord. And in a split second, he said, as soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, what did Simon Peter do? He went to Jesus. I want to go to Jesus. I want to be with Jesus. I owe him my life. let him down. I'm living in a place of brokenness. I set the fire on fire. I'm the one that burned down the building that I had tried to create when I promised Jesus that I would never deny him. The least I can do is go to him, because I now know who he is and the difference he can make in my life. And so he gets off of that boat. He wraps his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off for the fishing, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat. There was no one more zealous than Peter. At first you might say, well, Peter just wanted to get out of the work. They were towing a net full of fish, so they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. There's the reference. And when they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. What a perfect setup. Because do you remember the last time we had experienced burning coals? It was at Peter's denial. He's sitting around a warm fire, a charcoal fire most likely. And he's warming like all the other people that were in that context. And he was warming himself. And in that context of where he's by that fire, he denies Jesus 3 times before the rooster crows. So Jesus is going to provide. Because on that fire, it said there were fish on it and some bread. And Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you've caught. I have provided for you. We think of fish and bread. We think of the places in the scripture where we see fish and bread. We saw it at the feeding of the 5,000. He provided for the needs of others. We saw it at the Last Supper. He provided and wanted to show them that I want to serve you. I love you. I want to be compassionate toward you. But he wants to bring them in. It isn't one direction. It's 2 directions. Bring some of what you have. Let's share it together. So Simon Peter climbs back into the boat. He drags the net ashore. It was large. It was full of large fish. And for some reason it says 153. You can go and be this number, biblical scholar about numbers, and I can tell you that over the last 2,000 years, no one's fully figured this out. Why 153? You know why? Because I want people to know that it was a lot of fish. It was enough. It was more than enough. The nets were full. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Do you hear the similarity to John chapter 1 and Luke chapter 5? Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. Now none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and he took the bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. And now this was the 3rd time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. You know that there was a pause for some of the disciples. They're going, is this really Jesus? He's similar but not the same. He is similar but he's been transformed. I don't know if you know this, but back when he came and he approached the disciples, guess what happened? They were in locked spaces, and guess who arrives? Jesus. You can bypass that all you want, but Jesus walked through the walls. He came and went as he wished. Okay, he is now spiritually transformed. This is a new body. You can figure it out whatever way you want, but he's not like you and me in that way. He is now transformed. In the same way, I believe we will be transformed when we come to new life in Christ at the resurrection, but I don't fully understand it. And it sort of weirds me out. But the fact is, he's different. And there's something about him that's different, yet the same. There's something incredible about him. It's not worse, it's better. They're coming to terms with this. So now, we're now moving into the next phase of the restatement. And I say the restatement because he states something 3 times. That's what we famously know about this passage. Jesus is going to ask him 3 questions, and Peter's going to respond 3 times. Let me read it. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? More than what? More than the boats? More than the fish? More than your job? More than the guys you work with? More than your safety? More than your familiarity? I don't know what. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? I don't know how much time there was in between these 2 questions, but do you love me? And he answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. the third time, he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. What's going on here? Well, you can get, and I've heard this before, to be quite honest. I've heard that Jesus, and it is in the text, Jesus, in the first 2 times, he's saying, do you agape love me? Do you love me with a covenant agreement? With everything you have, that we're going to make it through, I'm going to give you everything, I'm going to lay my life down for you kind of love. And Jesus gets a response from Peter, and Peter's response is, yeah, oh yeah, I phileo love you. I have deep affectionate friendship for you. That's what the first 2 questions say. Do you agape love me? Oh yeah, I phileo love you. Do you agape love me? Yeah, I phileo love you. And Jesus drops it in the third one. Okay, do you phileo love me? Yes, I phileo love you. Many scholars, though, would say that in the context of this conversation, it's basically the same. It's this question. That's not where we should get hung up. It's about, do you love me? Do you love me agape? Do you love me phileo? Do you love me? Do you love me? And yes, and yes, and yes, there's this restatement to the point where Peter's like, I've already answered this. But it caused him pause. But here's the thing that Jesus asks him to do. Feed my lambs, or feed my sheep. If you do love me, then feed my sheep. What does that mean? It means to teach them, to guide them, to nourish them, to watch over them, to defend them. And there's a promise made here. He knows his heart. So Peter in this moment says, yes, I love you, and I will teach those that you've put me to teach, and I'm going to guide those you've caused me to guide, and nourish those in your flock, and watch them and defend them with all that I have, because I want things to be restored. Do you notice how many times Jesus was denied by Peter? It was 3. Do you notice how many times that Jesus asked him the question? 3. Almost like he was reinstating Peter. He was reconstructing Peter. He was restoring Peter. So we move from the idea that Jesus is guiding the disciples, especially Peter. He was providing for them. He came and he wanted to love them and nourish them and have a relationship with them. He wanted to guide them, provide for them, but he also wanted to restate, as he wants to do for us. And this is the activity for us today. How many times would Jesus have to ask you, do you love me, to get the right answer? How many times do you think that he would have to ask you that question for you to be restored from the thing that you know is separating you from him today? When you knew that it was Jesus, would you jump off of that boat to go toward Jesus to say, I need to be with him because you know what? I've been without him. And I don't want to live another moment without him. But finally, it's the reinstatement. Jesus starts by saying, in verse 18, very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself. Peter was doing his own thing. He had a life of freedom. And you went wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you to where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. I don't know if you know this, but Peter later also died by crucifixion. It's well believed. Then he said to him, follow me. And Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. So to this point, it seemed pretty clear. He was 99% of the way there. Yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. I want to be restored to you. I want to make this right. I want you to change me again. I want to be absolutely renovated in my heart for you. And I want to live it out through a life of restoration. And so, Jesus is coming to the climax. Follow me. But Peter has one more question. He had a close relationship with John, just as Jesus did. You know, the inner 3, James, and John, and Peter, James, and John. So he looks over his shoulder and he sees John walking behind, or somewhere close. And he says, well, what about him? I know you're asking me, but what about him? get distracted from Jesus' call on our lives by pointing to someone else. So Peter turned and he saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them, and this was the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who is going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? And Jesus very aptly answers, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. See, the question is very pointed. Because of this, the rumor spread amongst the believers that this disciple would not die, but Jesus did not say that he wouldn't die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? The focus is on you. And for me, the focus is on me. This is a personal story today. Do I believe that Jesus is my God? Do I believe that Jesus will provide? Do I understand when I am to be sitting in his presence and have the statement, do you love me, restated 3, 4, 5, or more times? And am I willing to be reinstated? Because I think that when this story comes to a close, we understand that there are 3 faithful promises that disciples make. At the very beginning, they did. At the very beginning, when Jesus called them in John chapter 1, he said, I want you to follow me. I want you to fish, but I want you to move from fishing for people, but now to fish for men and women. And I want you to feed my sheep. I need you to care for one another. This is exactly what we have committed to as faithful followers of Christ, whether you knew it or not. And today, the question that becomes for me, I'm wrestling with this. I'm going, okay, Jesus, I'm like Peter. I made a commitment to you. I made a commitment to follow you. Do I spend time with Jesus like he calls me to? Because I can't follow him if I'm not with him. I can't follow Jesus if I'm not spending time with him. I can't do what he does if I'm not learning from my rabbi, my master, my teacher. He calls us to follow him, but he also calls us to fish, to follow his instruction, to go out, and he calls us to be guided by him, but also to be provided by him. He wants us to go out and fish and share this good news with the world. He tells us that. He tells us in many different places. He tells us in Matthew 28, the Great Commission, go into all the world and make disciples. He says in Mark 16, I want you to proclaim the gospel to all creation. In Acts chapter 1, he says, be my witnesses locally and globally. And in John 15, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches, and what you are to do is bear fruit. Why? Because you are to show that you are my disciples. That's why we go. So my question, as I'm hearing from Jesus, is, are you following me? Are you fishing for me? Not in your own strength and your own wisdom on the right side of the boat. Are you doing it my way, on the way that I call you, on the against the grain type of side of the boat? Are you casting your nets? Are you sharing this good news with others? Are you being my witnesses locally and globally? And am I feeding the sheep that Jesus called me and asked me to feed? Am I serving you? In my position as a pastor here, am I serving you well? Am I feeding you? Am I coming alongside you, encouraging you, and nurturing you? Because that's my calling. That's what God is asking me to do. So we've been committed to be guided by Jesus. We've been committed to the understanding that he provides for us. It's not through our human strength that anything takes place. He is the one that causes the fruit to emerge. He wants to state to us once again, and maybe over and over, he wants to counteract any denial that we've made in our life. And I want us to understand that there's this place in our life where we have to battle between conviction and condemnation. That many of us today will feel condemned, like Peter felt condemned for the things that they have not done right or the fires that they have lit. And I want to tell you and remind you today and encourage you to understand that Christ's disciples, like Peter and like us, have the calling to go out and to follow and to fish and to feed, but we cannot do that unless we are healed and released by God's Spirit from self-criticism or depression or spiritual pessimism. That we need to be restored and recommissioned in the same way that Peter was. We are to love one another deeply from the heart. Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 22, love one another deeply from the heart. Not by your renewed energy or skill faith in Jesus, that he is who he said he was, that he loved you first, and that you now will love the church because we love Christ, who first loved us. So I think as this story ends, we're now reminded, I think 21 ends so well. We thought we were done in 20, but 21 ends, and final two verses are just as rich. Let me read them. This is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down, and we know that his testimony is true. John was authentically writing what he had seen and heard, because he wanted to tell people this good news about Jesus. He was divine, that he had full authority and power to do what he promised to do, that he overcame death so that you and I could live faithful and fulfilling free lives. But the final verse says this: Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. And so I don't know what your journey is. That actually isn't my real concern. Because I know, just as Jesus instructed Peter, don't look to the person behind you, or to the right of you, or to the left of you, or the one who seems so far ahead of you. He wants to meet with you. He wants to restore you. He wants you to follow him. He wants you to fish for him. He wants you to be fed by him and to feed others because of the love that he has shared for you. And so, my question to you this morning is, how about you? I know I'm wrestling with the question, but how about you? Are you in need of restoration and recommissioning this morning? It's not that you have ill intent. Peter didn't have ill intent. He just made a mistake. But Jesus wants to remind us of the mission. And although the restoration of Notre Dame took $1 billion and well over 5 years, the restoration of Will Smith is ongoing and maybe cost him $1 billion for all I know. It's going on now and will probably be for the next at least 6 years until the 10 years have passed. But I want to tell you today, it will cost you a lot too. It will cost you everything, because that's the cost of following Jesus. But it's worth it. And you don't have to wait 5 years or 10 years or even 5 minutes. It can be now. He wants you to come. He wants you to say, yes, I do love you. I do love you. I do love you. And he wants you to feel and experience the restoration. Last week, actually, I know people were recording this, and it will be awkward to do this with the recording, so thank you for watching. What I want us to do is, last week we had a testimony